It's just they really love you, maybe a little bit too much, but
yeah. But Rob wasn't my stalker. I had to beat him down and be like, come on, give it to me.
you were his stalker. The roles reversed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I was the target.
Yeah. It's your own fault. I mean, really. Come on. Whatever. My son saw Rob's picture and he said, I said, what do you think about this? He said, bold action. His profile picture is him in the orange jumpsuit on top of one of the Bay Bridges. I was like, what? That's like testosterone right there. Ooh,
Aw, that's great.
you know what he was doing, putting that energy out there for all those women.
You guys are vibing. I can feel it.
Yes. Now you're choking. Let me give her a call. She should be here in a second, so that's 2. I'm not gonna wait for the other lady because she confirmed at the last minute. And oh, that's an alarm.
So I'm just gonna, well, you do that then. I shared your post, so I'll let people know you're gonna post it or you're gonna share it after we're live.
Yeah, I can share it after, unless somebody really just wants to come on and listen. Yeah, we're here. I know what I could do is just start with what my part and then introduce, whoa. Well, no, we only got Randi.
No, I'm actually about to jump on. My tax lady called me real quick to ask me a question, and that's the call that I was on. So I'm about to jump on right now.
Oh, well, girl, I thought you said you were about to jump in the shower. I was like, okay, well, we about to get rocking. I know. That always happens, yeah. I know. Let me get my music on too, get some music playing. Last time we've been having some sassy music. Well, I'll let you get yourself together and then we'll be on here. So we probably got about, 3 to 5 minutes for her to get on. All right. You good? All right. Okay. Okay, no problem. Yeah. So where are you? Are you out in Canada?
I am. I'm in Toronto. So sorry, not in Toronto. I'm in Canada, Ontario, about an hour and a half northeast of Toronto, if you know where Toronto is.
That is so cool. I just met a gentleman, Master L. He's out there. And then Rudy, she's out there. And they just came to the last 2 lives we had.
Oh, awesome.
Canada's in the house. Yeah. So are you staying really busy?
I am so busy right now. I think because baby boomers are like at their end of their lives, like they're entering that age, right? Which was huge. And then we have like COVID and everything else going on. So people are like, because I help people who are not necessarily dying, but they want to just be prepared for when they get there. So it's kind of making everyone think about, what they want if that happens with all of COVID and all this stuff going on.
I'll save these questions. I'll save this because I feel like I think some people are giving consent and they're like giving up and just letting their souls up in a way. That's kind of how I feel what's happening. Like they're like, this is enough. I've seen enough. I got to get out of here. Yeah, I really feel. Yeah. I've seen so many ambulance lately. It's just.
The whole world is just, and people like, they're also so distracted because everyone's mind is just on like politics or the virus. And so everyone's nobody's paying attention to like the magic and the love and the good stuff, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to force myself to do. Because I see, I've lived in Orlando since 2006. I probably had, before COVID, I probably went to the beach twice.
Yeah.
During this summer, I mean, we probably went 8 times.
Yeah.
And start burning fires on the porch and start, just.
So are you guys in lockdown or you're fine? Yeah, we're in full lockdown. We can only go grocery shopping, to the hospital. Like we can't visit our friends and family right now. So it's difficult. I'm meeting a lot of people over virtual, but I would be considered an essential service. So I could go see them, right? It's preparing for that kind of thing. But yeah, we're in full, they're giving out $800 fines to anybody. So there's people like essential workers, doctors and nurses. So they're taking their children to their parents' house. And we've had like 3 people get $800 fines for doing that because you're not supposed to visit. It is so messed up.
It's such an invasion of your freedom.
It is. It's tough right now. So just trying to spread.
People understand freedom. Because they're trying to use the guys that, oh, you're keeping other people safe. And I said, when do you ever let anybody lock you in your own damn house?
Yeah. And we have our airports are still wide open. So our province is on full lockdown, but we have people flying in. I think yesterday there was 40 flights with positive cases on them. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't make any sense.
Who gets to fly? It's weird.
It's so weird. I'm just trying to laugh. What else can you do?
Yeah, with all that's going on here, like we tried to not watch anything political yesterday.
Yeah.
And just
I know the States is crazy right now with all the politics and everything.
I don't even know what to say about this whole situation. Hey, Mama, you on mute? There you go. There you go. So Virya, this is Randi. She's out in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah,
right?
close to.
Hey, how you doing, Randi? I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, so I'm like way down south.
Oh, okay. I like those areas though, both of you guys. It's freezing here, so I envy you.
You know what? Well, I'll actually, and it's funny because like in those areas, I know it gets super cold, and here I complain when it gets like 50 degrees outside, and I'm just like, what is going on here?
We were snowmobiling all day. We have like 2 feet of snow outside.
Oh wow! So, and you know that's funny because my daughter was just talking to me, and she was like, "I want to live somewhere with snow," and I was like, "How about we just vacation there?"
Yeah.
Just vacation because the driving in the winter and all of it sucks and it's freezing. I'm like a tropical. I was meant to live on a beach, I think.
Right though, like I wish I could live somewhere where it was just like always like mid to low 80s, and I would be just fine with that. Like that would be my dream paradise right there. Because I just I can't stand when it gets cold.
No, I hate it.
Yes, I do. So I do apologize for being late. It's like at the end of everything, like things just got crazy. So thank you guys for being patient with me.
Oh no, we're just warming ourselves up. I'm gonna go ahead and change the screen. We're not gonna be able to go live on Facebook. I'll be able to upload it once we're done. And yeah, I'm gonna ask some questions and just kind of vibe and free flow. We won't say anybody's names, like no political events, no, well, I mean, we could say our current situation or our current, current events or outbreaks or whatever, but not allowed to say the words like COVID or presidential names or anything like that. I have been pushed off saying that I'm offensive. So I'm like, what have I ever said on here that was offensive? I have no idea, but
people are offended when people are confident and courageous in speaking their own truth. So to them, sense of.
Yeah.
Because you're like that mirror for that part that they wish that they could be for you. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it comes when you're a truth speaker. It really does.
You're in the right spot, right?
Right? You know, sometimes it's just it comes with the territory. And
Yeah.
I've kind of had to learn how to kind of balance that myself, especially like with my page and that being where my followers are and stuff. So I try to honestly, I try to stay out of those topics anyway.
Yeah. I'm gonna probably kill that whole page and just. And I've already got another one that I already started, and I'm already up to 200 people on that page. And there's just really a lot of people I don't want to talk to anyway, because they really come and talk about things that me and Rob were just talking last night how now getting into these conversations is more burdensome than it's ever been before. And I know I like to be, a little bit spicy and kind of have these conversations, but it is to the point where either you get it or you don't. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of my energy. And then it's like, if our frequencies are off, now we're being weird. It's like, you all right? You all right? You all right? Are you upset? It's like, so let's just not have these conversations with other people. And and
it's exhausting to have to explain yourself too. Like,
Yeah.
I hate having to explain myself, and that's what people want. And I think they project what they're feeling about themselves onto you, right? So if you're like very strong, they're either wishing they were that way, or they're like super forward and they're like, well, you're just offensive, because they don't know how to even approach that, right? But you're not offensive at all.
No.
I mean, I personally haven't been offended by anything. You know, I just be like,
Yeah.
damn, she's snapping, like, hey.
Because you living right. See? No.
Yes, we're all vibing.
And that's
Oh,
why
lady,
I wrote that
they
post.
bother you.
Because I said, are you the wheat? Are you the chaff? Are you the blade? Which one are you? You know what I mean? Because, I like that, the wheat and the chaff, because the chaff is just the garbage. It gets blown away.
Yeah.
It's the part that you eat and get nourished with. The blade is the one that judges,
And anyone who made a difference in this world stood up to the masses, and they weren't very well liked by everybody until they died, right? And then when you die, everybody likes you. But you know what I mean? People who made a difference, they rub some people the wrong way, but you have to. You can't make everybody happy.
Hell no. Then you're living wrong for sure.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and change the screen.
Okay.
And this is the Mo Zone. Tonight we're doing divine doulas. We got two wonderful ladies, Rhea Slay, spiritual coach, psychic medium. She helps with mental health, EO advocate, Wombynist. And then we also have the amazing death doula, Randi. She's a holistic health healer, spiritual guide, death doula, Reiki master, music therapist. These wonderful ladies are hanging out with us tonight on the Mo Zone, and they're going to tell us more about their journey, what they do, and how they help people. And trust me, it's way more than we could put on this little flyer. I know that.
Yes. It's
Way more. So I'm so excited to meet you, ladies. First, we have Randi, Death Doula Randi, out in Toronto. So you can introduce yourself. Let us know what exactly the Death Doula encompasses. What spurred you to even do this, and just tell us more about how this all works.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I was super excited when you reached out. So, like you said, my name is Randi, and I'm a death doula. So, a death doula empowers, advocates, and informs the dying and their family. Often, and I'll just give you a quick little blurb, but often our own doctors don't know our end of life wishes. Medical teams are generally there to keep people alive, regardless of the quality of life once that person is kept alive. And that's not what everybody wants. So we let people know that you do not have to be brought back once you go. We let them know of all of their different options. we're kind of like an assistant depending on what each death doula scope of practice is. So I help a lot of people plan celebrations of life, doing vigils. I had a client who passed away and she was leaving behind a little girl. So we helped fill out birthday cards for every single year that she would get and open for her mom. So just, and then as well, she was very much an earth lover, and she didn't want to leave a huge carbon footprint. And so she wanted to look at all her options. So she ended up being aquamated when she passed away, which is a form of cremation, but it uses water and 0 fossil fuels. So it's amazing. And yeah, I love it. I love helping people. What sort of led me to this life path? When I was 15, my sister passed away in high school, and we were best friends, and I really struggled with that, and I made some terrible choices. I hated life. I hated love, God, everything. I was very angry, and I was sort of running from death. And then I had my children, which they saved my life. I turned my life around. And when people were dying around me, I realized I had this strength where I could kind of hold it together until afterwards. And when my grandmother died, who I was very close to, I was the person in our family who stood up and spoke all about her at her funeral. And I really enjoyed that, kind of giving myself that closure when I did that, and giving closure to other people. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, like this thing I've been afraid of and running from is exactly what I need to turn around and face. And when I did that, I fell in love with how beautiful death can be. Death doulas love life. They're not obsessed with death. They're not morbid. They love life, and they want to make the end of someone's life as beautiful as the beginning of their life. And that's really what it's all about. And yeah, and I feel like I'm friends with death almost now. I don't fear it at all. It's like reading a book to me. It's just there. It's just something that's a part of us.
Wow, that's amazing. And so we're going to get more into it, but first we're going to introduce Virya Slay out here in Texas. Just let us know where you are, where you practice, and what encouraged you to be a rebirth, or you can explain exactly what it is that you do and how it all works. How this little background.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for inviting me on the show.
I'm so glad you guys are here. It's exciting.
I love talking about this, and because this process is something that's very close to me, because it's something that I struggled with. So, like you introduced me, I'm Virya Slay, and I'm what I call a spiritual doula. And the reason I chose that title is because I wanted to be much more. I started out doing readings, but I figured out early on that I wanted to go way beyond just telling someone what to expect with their lives and, giving advice. Like, I wanted to actually help women in particular go through this rebirth process, because I went through my own, and it was something because I experienced something like a death of my own, like a death of my former version, and I was rebirthing myself into something new. But the difficult part about that, and something that's not very normalized in a journey, is that there's this confusion, this clarity, this not knowing, and you get these answers from people that you got to go within, right? And when I was on my journey, I used to be like, what the heck does that mean? Like, go within. And so I got called to this path because I was finding that when it came to the actual rebirth process, and I'm not just talking about learning how to balance your chakras and things like that, but actually learning how to go through the transformation process and to be able to go through it with grace and just like wanting to, just jump out of the window. I felt that there was a gap between the information that was out there and the student. It was like I felt that there was this bridge that needed to happen, because I just remember going through it on my own and coming across all this information where people was wanting to tell you what to do, and or they're giving you rules that felt like religion, and it's just like I couldn't find anyone who was actually well rehearsed in teaching someone how to find those answers themselves. And so that's why I decided to be a spiritual doula, because I wanted to be the support for women, to where they had someone to call and be like, please just tell me I'm not going crazy right now.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's because I feel like we all go through that rebirthing process through numerous times, and it is something that it's a skill to go through, because change and having to release an old version of yourself is something that's is very difficult to process. It's like a loss of your own. And I found that I even grieve in that process, because I'm having to let go of something that I was once so certain was going to be a forever thing. And I believe that process needs to be respected. Because sometimes it just kind of irks me when I hear people be like, just be like, bye to her. And I'm like, would you do a close relationship that you're losing like that? Like, no, there needs to be some closure, and there should be no shame in mourning an old version of yourself.
That's awesome.
Boy, you said a lot. Okay, so there's a grieving of the old version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. I think in every aspect, like people have to even grieve, like in both your processes, there's dealing with grieving. I feel like at times, in many situations, people want you to just get over things and move on quickly and just accept things, like a breakup, a death of your old self and into your new self. And there's always going to be like a grieving process, even even in breakups and just things like that. So I guess I'll start with Virya. How do you help someone with their grieving process when it comes to life and you're giving yourself over to a new life? Maybe there's some people you no longer, are in your life. What are some recommendations that you make?
Well, for one, the very first thing that I walk people through is giving yourself permission.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we skip that because we feel guilty, or we feel shame because we're even sad, because we are in this cutoff culture that's just like where you're supposed to just be able to cut something off and move on to the next like that. So the first thing I walk people through is permission, and to have no expectations on what the actual process looks like, because nothing is linear when it comes to healing past something. And you have to allow grace in the process, because there will be days where you're absolutely fine, and you're ready, and then there's some days where you wake up and the reality is starting to sit in, because you're seeing the things that was once part of your old life fall away. And so those days you don't do too good. And I tell people, you have to allow those days to be those days and to let it flow. And the reason I do that is because that's how repression actually turns into an ugly shadow. Because instead of giving yourself permission to go through the actual grief and to feel those feelings, you end up just pushing through it. And then what happens is you skip this process and you have this shadow that lashes out whenever it's triggered. So that's the very first thing that I teach people to do. And, I will even halt services if someone is not mentally there, because I know that the changes would not be authentic. And I will let someone know, like, I think you need time to even grieve this process first. Because if you go out trying to make these changes before even having the acceptance of the loss, they're not going to be authentic and you're going to find yourself reverting. Um, so it's about being honest and just giving yourself permission, really.
Wow. So for you, Randy, what are some of the things you recommend to help prepare your clients for that grieving process? Because as a person, not just a family, but for the person who is preparing for death, that is preparing for the separation.
Yep.
And you will most likely go through some grieving, I assume.
So with the actual person who is passing away, there's so many really unique, which might seem strange to people, processes that you can go through. So you can actually, I've had clients who create their own urns, or they'll design their own caskets. And there's something very fulfilling about having complete control right to the very last moment that makes people feel like they're a little bit more in control of their grief. Often when we get close to like the very last, like say the last week or the last 2 weeks, there becomes almost, the person sort of changes. They don't all of a sudden, they don't often get very afraid. They'll have moments where there's fear, but they'll have moments of awe where they're almost like a child again, and they're seeing the world in a completely different light. And then they sort of walk themselves through that grief process. But I also use with with my dying clients and their family and friends, I'll use music. Music therapy is really good. I love oils and smells. They are great for grief. I do my Reiki as well on people. But really just being a companion and holding that space for someone. Often when we go to people with a problem, they want to give us a solution, right? And it's like, sometimes you don't want to hear what you need to do. You just want to get it out, and them just be like, your feelings are valid, and that's enough, you know? So just really being a friend, and really letting them know that all of their feelings are valid. If they're angry at the person who died, that's okay. If you're angry at yourself, that's okay. Like, never apologize for the emotions you're going through, because it's a roller coaster.
So I do have a question for you. Do you walk with the living members after they pass? Do you also continue to walk with them through that journey as well to help them grieve the loss?
Yeah. Depending what they want. So I was a death doula for a little boy who passed away, and his mother, I worked with her a little bit afterwards. I've done some readings for her as well. I read tarot, and I'll have spirit come through a little bit, and her son came through after he passed away, which was amazing. And it gave her so much comfort. I have goosebumps when I talk about it. It just gave her so much comfort. And then the lady I was telling you about with her daughter, I still work with, I talk to the school a little bit that she goes to. I still have certain things. For example, her mother painted this picture, which I'm holding on to until the daughter's old enough. She's only 5, so till she's old enough to appreciate and take care of. And then, yeah, any other family members that are grieving, or that need a grief therapist, that kind of thing, absolutely.
Wow. So who usually contracts you, the family or the dying person?
Either or, actually. The dying person, if they're well enough, usually reaches out, but sometimes it can be a distraught family member, or I get a lot of people who are caring for like their older parents, and they're exhausted. They have kids of their own, they have lives of their own, and they feel totally guilty for needing a break. And I get a lot of those. And it's true, we still have our lives. Like, once this person's physical life is over, we still have our physical life. So we have to keep that intact while we're caring for our parents and stuff. So that's where a death doula comes in to take all that hard stuff so the family can just visit and love and enjoy each other.
Wow. In both cases, I think most people want someone trusted they can just sit with and talk to. And even in both cases, I can totally see a person who's really thoughtful about life and the direction that they're going. But even more so with the death doula, it seems like how thoughtful you'd have to be in consideration of your own family, because you're really getting things ready, because we've seen places or, ways how people are caught unprepared, or they're watching it happen and they're just so burdened down and heavy that if you could have somebody help explain it and just share techniques to deal with this, it just sounds like the most thoughtful thing you could do for your family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
People hear burnout pretty quickly too, right? And it's like, because they want to spend every last moment with this person before they die, but you can't help anybody else if you don't help yourself first, right? If you're exhausted, you're not going to be very useful to the person dying, with what they need.
So for both of you, these seem like very very detailed, very like you're getting to know somebody so deeply. This is the two things I would ask, like, how do you balance your own energy? How do you balance your own energy when having to deal with basically almost taking on someone else's burden? Or is there a balance where you're like, I don't take on the burden? How does that work for you? I'll ask Randi first.
For me, it's sort of like Reiki energy, if you know much about it. Your arms and your hands are a tool for that energy, but it's not draining your energy, which is important to know. So it's sort of like that, where I can kind of step away and be an outsider. But some people I get really close with, and when they pass away, I'm like, oh God, like I grieve them, right? You become friends with these people. And so for myself, I do guided meditations. So I do a lot of meditating for myself. I take a lot of baths. When I am in the bath, that is my happy place. And I can just let everything wash away. But I ground my energy a lot. It's winter right now, so I can't, but I go outside in my bare feet all the time. And I will like touch the trees and just touch the ground and get that energy from it. It sounds funny, but it's so calming. It works really well.
I'm hearing a lot about trees lately. So for me, the same thing, like, how do you make sure you stay with your source energy, just focus?
Well, one thing, and this is something that I just practice regularly anyway, is I shield my energy when I'm working with people, is to make sure that there's a level of separation, because as an empath, you can really take on people's energy and not even realize it and start feeling things as your own. So that's one thing I definitely do. I practice shielding on a daily basis. And I definitely notice the difference whenever I'm not doing it, because, I get heavily emotional because, a lot of times I'm sent clients who have walked very similar paths as me. And so, I have to be very careful with over identifying with the client. So another thing that I do is constant shadow work, to make sure that I'm addressing my own core issues so that it's not interfering with my care. And then setting boundaries, because, your clients they can lean on you very heavily, but you don't want to create a codependent relationship, or you don't want to trauma bond with your clients. And so I set very strict boundaries with my clients as well. And it's not to be callous, and it's not to, show that I not care, but with the amount of clients that I work with, I have to be very careful that I can make sure that I attend to my personal life and my children. And, you know, on days where it does get heavy for me, I do similar practices. You know, I'm either going for a walk out in nature, um, or I'm taking a bubble bath, or, you know, I may even just meditate. Sometimes I love to just go into a deep theta state and
Yeah.
just explore the ethers just to get away for a second. But it definitely requires a balance and having some strict boundaries.
Do you find it's hard for you? Because I notice sometimes, I'm glad you brought that up. I will be like in such a bad mood and I'm like, this day was good. Where did this come from? I don't even realize it's not my emotions until I'm like, hang on a sec. I have nothing to be upset about right now. Do you find sometimes it's hard for you to decipher if it's your emotion or your clients?
Yes, and that's exactly why I practice the shielding. And this is something that I teach to my empath clients. And it's funny because when I teach this technique to my clients, they're just like, it's so cool, you know, because I teach it because it doesn't only like shield your energy, but it helps you with identifying what belongs to you and what belongs to someone else. Because if you have that shield up and you've done it properly, then everything within inside of that shield is you, and you're going to still feel it. But anything that's outside of that barrier, you know, if it's not you, that sensation, that feeling is going to drop.
Yeah.
So I find that even my clients find that it's pretty amazing how it's just a simple visualization tool, you know, you can totally change the way you're just soaking in someone's energy.
Yeah. Wow. I might have to get some of tips and tricks from you on that.
You know, the imagination is the key to a lot of it. You know, I tell my clients, picture your shield as grand as you need it. Like, you know, I'm like, if you need to put a reflective mirror on it so you can just send some of that energy back because you're dealing with psychic attacks, do it. You know, like your imagination is really the key to working with energy.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Do you all find yourself working with like archangels, or there's do you all work with archangels, and then there's the purple light, the purple flame, isn't it? Or am I saying it wrong? The purple flame?
You know, I honestly wouldn't worry about saying it wrong, because there's so many different names depending on the culture that you're coming from and, you know, the practice that you're following. So I don't even get caught up on names anymore. There are some people who do get offended by it. I'm not one. But as far as working with angels, I've only been called to work with angels directly on a few occasions. Now, with my personal practice, you know, Metatron is one that tends to come to mind a lot, and Raphael as well. But do I incorporate it in my teachings with my clients? Not too much. Not only if I'm called to, and that's because I'm kind of, you know, it's just out of respect of me being the healer on, you know, in the physical realm. I tend to not like to call on deities, because I don't want to create a dependence on their power.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I feel like we need some interference if I call on.
Yeah.
Right. And I know what I was supposed to be saying, the violet flame. I've heard people talk about the violet flame, you know.
You know what? It's interesting you bring that up because I don't work with a lot of direct angels either. But I get a lot of messages in my dreams, and that's where I'm still learning to work with those and to not bring them forward unintentionally. And the other night, actually, this was 4 or 5 days ago, I had a dream of a hand, and the center of the hand was this big glowing purple orb, and I was like, what? And my messages I keep getting is that I'm very good at deciphering messages for other people. I struggle to decipher them for myself. So I don't intentionally work with these things, but they're coming to me, and I'm not really sure what to do with them at this point.
Right. I'm not gonna lie. When I was going through my awakening, and I, was having different entities and spirits and angels that were coming to me, and like you, when it comes to reading for other people, like I got that, but when it comes to myself, I'm like, I'm not too sure, and I know what kept me from working with them in the beginning was, I didn't want to disrespect, I didn't, especially since you hear so much about offerings and making sure you know what they like, and I was so busy trying to work on my own spiritual healing that I was like, I don't have time to study what you like too. Like I'm trying to figure out what I like. So I felt like it was a distraction to my growth, and I really didn't get comfortable with even starting to work with them until maybe 2 years later into my journey. And even then, like I said, I tread very lightly when dealing with other deities and energies, because there's boundaries even that they have, and nobody wants to get that spiritual spanking.
Well, and you know what? My aunt, when her husband died years and years ago, she saw a psychic, and the psychic said, my sister came through, and she said, she's really busy. Like, don't call on her. She's super busy doing stuff. And if she'll come to you when you really need her, but try not to. So I try not to bring spirit or angels or things forward unless they really want to come through on their own, which can happen.
Yeah. And that's exactly where it is. Like sometimes I have, in readings, some family members that come through or something, but I rarely took on medium readings where someone was requesting for me to reach out to a spirit. It's just, it wasn't my favorite service because, like you said, sometimes they're like, what? Like,
yeah.
They don't always want to come and give a message.
No. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? When people have expectations, almost always they're gonna go against that. Like you have to let all your expectations drop to really get through anything that's supposed to be coming through, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I call it because a lot of people can impose in their readings because they're letting their own perceptions and their own beliefs actually interfere with the message. And, then you have to take a step back and like, is that what I'm saying or is that what Spirit's saying? So,
right.
But.
Absolutely. I did a reading for a girl just the other day, and October 11th kept coming through, and I'm like, what is this it means nothing. You get that, right? And you're like, I don't know what I'm saying, but here it is. And she's like, well, I don't know what it is. And so it was her grandfather who came through, and that was the date of their wedding anniversary. And I could smell cologne in my house all day that day. And I'm like, I asked her, I said, okay, so this is their thing. Did he wear a lot of cologne? And she's like, no, but aftershave, oh, you could smell it everywhere. And I'm like, okay, he's been hanging out in my house all day, and I'm fine with it. But so yeah, sometimes they'll just come through and make themselves known, and then they're done.
Right. Because I'm a physical receptor with my medium abilities. And, so I would feel physical sensations and, all of that. So sometimes I'll be like, look, guys, no, I don't mind you being in my space, but we gotta do something here because you're killing me.
Get this half of the house and I'll take this.
Like sometimes I feel bad because I know that they're not bad spirits, but it's just like I don't want to be bothered. So I'd be like, can you guys just exit the building? Can we do that, please? And come back in like 48 hours when I'm ready to.
So you like you said, you get to be in such a close proximity with the person. Have you ever had to enforce like the ending of your service? But before that, how long, you're helping somebody through the rebirth process, trying to understand who they are and put their life into perspective. How long do you usually spend, with a client at first, Rhea?
It varies on what my clients are coming to me for, because I offer several different classes. There's one that's dedicated to shadow work. There's one that's dedicated to emotional trauma. There's one that's dedicated to me training you on your own psychic abilities and things like that. So it depends on which part of the journey you're in. So it's usually any with the minimum 6 weeks, but the most 12. And then after that, I will now if you're looking to learn how to take it to a next step to where you're trying to make this your life purpose and you're needing help with transitioning this into a business or something, I will walk with you along that. But at that time, I've supplied enough PDFs, enough workbooks, enough practices to where once you stop working with me, you shouldn't need me anymore. And that's always my goal, is to not just help you walk through this one process, but anything that I teach you, you can not only take to reapply whenever you find yourself in another cycle or going through another rebirthing process, but ideally you should know this information so well that you could go and teach it to somebody else.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And with you, Randy, how long do you spend with the family? I guess it really, in some cases, it's gonna depend on that person's.
Yeah, it depends. So I teach a death doula course as well because I found I really liked the course I took, but I found I wanted some more healing practices with that. So I put together a course where we teach all of like the healing oils and stuff like that. So we run, it's the Ontario School of Energy, I call it. It's all online, but so some clients will come and take the death doula class to become a death doula. And because of social media, once they follow that page, we're sort of always interacting. Some people kind of like stop interacting, but a lot of people stay on and they're liking things or they have questions. And then for people who are dying, it really depends. Yeah, some people I work with for quite a while after. Some people I work with long before they even have like a diagnosis that they're dying, and then we'll get everything kind of in place of what they want. And then when they get closer to that time, I'll come back into their lives and advocate and make sure they get everything that they set into place. But then it depends too. So I've had clients where their family was like overburdening them and they're calling me like, I need a break from my mom or whoever it is. And I've had to sit there and be like, they don't want to see you today. And I'm so sorry. And I know I'm not your family. So sometimes when that happens and then the person passes away, they're like, they don't want anything to do with me. And I get it, but I'm not there for, they didn't specifically hire me. The dying person hired me. So I have to be there for my client even after life. And a lot of times if they're upset and they disappear, they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like my emotions. And I'm like, it's okay. Grief does funny things to people. And so there's no set time. It really, every situation is so unique.
Yeah, I definitely like even with sessions that I have with clients, I always put like at least 30 minutes between each session because I don't like being one of those coaches where it's just like, well, your hour's up, or the program is up, and that's why I actually like to separate it because, I've seen some of these coaching packages and, what works for one coach works for one coach. But I just noticed that when it came to this spiritual journey that is so unique to each individual that I found it better to create different programs and allow people to enroll in those based on where they're at. So, if at the end of the 6 weeks, they're like, you know what, I'm good with my shadow work, but I still feel like, there's still some hidden inner trauma that I need to work on. So like, let me go through your healing masterclass, or, now I really want to know how I can start listening to my intuition. So let me take your quantum, reading class because,
Yeah.
you know, there's just different things that, you know, that you'll want to know through the rebirthing process. And it's not always, I want to heal. Sometimes it's like, you want to advance, you know? So I create programs that can allow people to come and go. Like, I can do this 6 weeks. And if I want to do another 6 weeks, then that's fine. But at the very least, you know what you came to me for. You wouldn't have to unnecessarily spend more money. Or, you know, just keep coming to sessions. You know, I don't, my goal is to never create a codependent relationship.
Right.
And I've only had, I think, 2 clients that I've had to actually myself step back because they were, like you said, codependent. It was a consistent, I mean, like 1 o'clock in the morning. And mind you, I work with people in all different time zones. So people in different time zones I get, but you know, in the same time zones, and they're messaging. And then they're angry. And I'm like, I just woke up to your, like, I'm sorry, you know, and I'm realizing their energy is just on a different, we don't vibe together, and that's okay. So I'll recommend them to somebody else. But yeah, often people,
have there been people that you just could not work with?
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Those are the people. There was 2, and but the nice thing is I never, even if people get angry, I don't say to them, you know, you're horrible, because I don't think people are horrible. I think people are going through things that other people just don't understand. And if it comes across as abrasive to me, then I obviously am not understanding where this energy is coming from, why it's there. And so I'll recommend, you know, maybe a life coach if they're coming just for energy work, or a different death doula that if they're coming for that. Or I always try to recommend somebody who would fit their needs, kind of thing. But yeah, I always give myself the opportunity to step back if it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely didn't want my business to be money motivated. So I'm always very careful of who I accept as a client. And as soon as I start feeling the energies off or something, definitely, terminate the relationship. And if I know someone that's a better fit, then I will. I've even had instances where working with people through their emotional healing, where it wasn't even that it was a bad dynamic between us. It's just that I felt like they needed more help than my training, could give. And so I will, recommend them to a licensed professional that I trust in those instances. But yeah, definitely, I'm very careful not to take energies where my spirit isn't aligning, because I don't feel like the work is going to be it's not going to be received well when there's tension between the coach and the client.
Yeah. And sometimes the energy, like they can be carrying energy that's not theirs, and they're bringing that with them. And it's like energy baggage kind of. And you're like, okay, I need to recommend you to someone who can help, clear that, and then come back, and then we can move forward with what we're doing. Because sometimes I can't clear the energy if it's like this huge, like just heavy kind of energy, you know what I mean? It can be hard to lift that and remove that from somebody.
Yes, especially when they're resistant to even acknowledging that that's happening.
Yeah, you have to, admitting is the first step in all areas.
Right?
Or accepting and admitting, yeah.
And there's actually even a week that I dedicate to being honest with yourself. And, because if you're not honest, then how can you make the changes that you need to make?
Yeah.
And being the doula and walking people with this process, sometimes you do have to deliver some harsh truths. So you're come across clients who are resistant to that, or resistant to the work that they need. I've had clients come to me, and their ideal of the situation was for me to teach them how to teach people to respect their boundaries. And I'm like, well, I'm supposed to be teaching you how to be empowered in your boundaries. Like I can't teach you how to force someone to do something you want them to do. That's not realistic. And I've had some clients who, like, after that didn't come back for a session, and I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, they're looking for like a quick some people are just looking for a quick way to make money or a quick way to do something. And it's like spiritual work, death doula work, and grief work is like a big process, and it's not roses. Like you're gonna cry, you're gonna maybe get angry, you're gonna go through a whole range, like a spectrum of emotions before you get to where you're like, oh, there's the flowers, you know? So it's a lot of work too. And it can't just be a quick thing where you're just leaving yourself to fix someone else. Like you really have to fix yourself first.
Exactly. And it's a tough process to go through. So I've kind of found that that's one of my biggest challenges, especially when I shifted from doing readings to 100% coaching. You know, I found that was where the challenge was with bringing on clients, because it's like they would be all ready, and then, you know, we'll have our consultation, you know, we're to see if it's a good fit. And there, you know, one of the things that I hear often is, I think I need to mentally prepare myself a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So,
Self-care is
so with you all having so many areas that you work in, is it how do you balance the areas that you work in? Like if you're working with a rebirth, or now you're working with someone, you want to train them on how to teach, or like for your, you know, how do you all do this? So I'll go ahead and start with Virya. How do you balance how many students or clients that you take on?
Well, I have a set number. Like I know that the minimum that I'm working with someone is 6 weeks, you know, for so like what I do is um I balance how many clients I'm taking on at a time, for one. I don't do more than 25 clients in a month. Um, and then with that, I can say that it's hard to juggle, because honestly, most of like, especially when it comes to teaching the quantum realm of spirituality, like a lot of that stuff is kind of second nature to me. So and to I actually worked with a instructional designer, a course designer who helped me kind of organize my stuff. So a lot of my stuff is already, you know, in presentation form. I'm not constantly having to rewrite something, and it's flexible enough to where I can fit it into different scenarios, because I don't make it too specific. What I do is I follow a process that I created, and then I have a set amount of exercises, and I choose from those exercises on what the client needs. And so it's really not that hard to keep up with, because I have it all organized in a drive. I have my client notes. I even have a journal where I take my client notes. I take it very seriously. So there, you know, I make sure that it's organized to where I don't. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have this in the beginning, but it was a lot of failures that led me to being more organized.
I'm sitting here like, you know, you had those slip ups in the beginning, because I did.
Yeah, it took a while for me to get there, because organization's not me. For one, I'm majority fire, so I'm the person who I like doing the projects, you know. But when it comes to like the tedious, the minor, the small details and stuff, I completely oblivious to it. So I did need to enroll help with that. Like, how do I even do this? Like, I had her teaching me how to even create a workbook, because I have the creativity, but the willpower to sit down and get organized, I fell at tremendously. No shame in my game.
That's awesome. I am a Pisces. If anybody knows anything about Pisces, we are like so far from organized. We are like dreamers, and we're creative, and we're emotional roller coasters, basically. So actually, it's funny because I use this schedule. Oh, I should cover the name because it's brand. But anyways, I have this schedule that I use, but I was like, I just want to do everything and help everybody. And I was running myself like exhausted because I couldn't I was forgetting appointments because I'm like, oh, you just want to help everybody. And finally I'm like, okay, I need to figure something out. So I partnered up with this girl, Melissa, who she's a registered nurse and she's an oil advocate. So she runs the school and courses with me, and she's so good. So like I found somebody who, is completely like holistic, spiritual, all that stuff. And she's organized. So she's been really helping me. And so for my death doula clients, I will take, it really depends. If I have clients who are close to death, then I will not, I won't take on more clients because I'm usually on call for them. And I have to be there at any time of day or night if they pass away or if they need me. If it's someone I'm very close to and I need time to grieve, I won't take on more clients. But then as far as the courses and stuff we offer, we're actually moving forward into doing months that are themed, which is a little bit easier, right? So we can focus on one area of healing and have like, some classes that month and maybe some meditations that focus on it and some yoga things. But I still struggle with that area because I love learning. I want to learn everything. I want to teach everything. I just love everything and I am passionate and I want to share that with everybody. And there's not enough hours. There's just not. That's all I can say.
Right. And that's what I struggle with because before I could expand, I knew I had to at least get that organized because I'm kind of in a position where you are, where like I'm wanting to not only just work one-on-one with clients, but I want to teach actual classes. But I'm like, I can't do that until I get this organized because then that's just adding something else that I have to keep up with that I know I'm not equipped right now to do. And so I can definitely relate to that because that's something I want to actually start doing next month is where I'm doing weekly live lectures.
Yeah.
I definitely, before I could launch that, and I actually had announced for it to launch in January, but I had to be honest with myself when January got here and I was like, I'm not ready yet.
But you like allowing yourself to be honest and be like, you know what, guys, I'm not ready, just allows all your clients to be honest with themselves when they face that kind of stuff. But absolutely. And you know what, because so much is online these days, that makes it easier. Like all of the courses I do are online. I can flip from one group to the next in a second. I don't have to drive all over the place. But hopefully when things clear in the world, we'll be able to get together in person where I am again. And I do want to have some in-person courses. I just can't right now because of the world. So.
Right. That's actually a goal of mine right now, but I'm looking at it as the universe preparing me for when that time comes. I'm
totally.
Like, if I can do it virtually, then I'll be ready for brick and mortar and, in person. So I always think about it as, this is just preparation and training for the next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ria, what other, have you had to maybe cooperate with another professional to help one client? Like, have you ever shared your services? Sometimes I guess there's life coaching and then there's spiritual coaching and then sometimes people need business coaching. So is that all under your umbrella or have you had to share services or what other professionals do you work with?
The only other professionals that I have worked with, and I wouldn't necessarily say work with, it was more of I gave material that I was going to be walking my client through so that she could show her therapist, because she was in therapy as well. So it was one of those things where we were kind of, she got permission to share some of her file with me so that I could be informed about what was going on with her. And she shared some of her form because her therapist just wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that was counterproductive to her therapy. But as far as working with other life coaches, how I got into spiritual coaching, I first started with life coaching certification, and I trained in trauma-informed care as well as cognitive behavioral techniques. So I'm trained in that area, so that, because a lot of times with spirituality and this is why mental health is something that's very important to me, because they actually really intersect very heavily. And when you actually study the history of psychology, psychology actually used to be the study of the soul, not the study of the mind. That wasn't changed, I believe, until like the 17th century, maybe the 18th century. I can't remember. But I do, but there, you know, psychology once was about the soul, and it wasn't changed until later in time. So I actually found that it really kind of encompasses both. And I'm very thankful for that training. And then as far as where my spiritual knowledge came from, that came from my spiritual mentor. But I actually did go to schooling for life coaching. So I don't really have to branch out too much with the services that I offer.
Okay, so yeah, because it seems like you got the whole package, because many life coaches, they can't really address spirituality on the level that you can. But also, Randi, I was gonna let you answer the same.
Yeah, I work with a whole range of people.
Yeah.
I work because death doulas are non-medical unless we have that training in addition to it. I work with medical staff. I work with funeral homes. I work with realtors getting ready to sell people's house when they've passed away. I work with lawyers. I work with different spiritual people too. Sometimes a client will come to me who may already have someone similar to Rhea, like they have a spiritual coach with them. So they don't need my spiritual side of the services. They just need the death doula side of them. And then of course I work with Melissa, and she does, like, she has tons of advice on oils to help with all different ailments and emotional ailments. And then I do pet doula, like pet death work as well. So there can be like veterinarians, and I mean, there's a whole team of people, and it just depends on if it's a person or a pet, and then their illness, their ailment, what kinds of staff or team they have working with them already.
I want to hear more about the pet and the real estate.
Right, that one that caught my attention. It really did, because I've only had a pet come through on a medium reading once, and so I really would like to hear about your experience with that.
Yeah, pet and real estate agents. Okay.
Okay, both. So real estate agent is shorter, so I'm going to do that first. The real estate agents are really just there when, like, often if a parent's dying and they have children who are like 20s, 30s, they'll just take over their house or whatever, they'll leave it to them. But if it's a grandparent or something and the children have their own homes and they have their own kids, they're sort of left with this estate of like, well, what do we do? Are we selling it? Da, 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 da. So I will sometimes help clients write wills, get them legalized with lawyers. And then when they're dying or they've just died, then we have to have a realtor come in. And often if it's our grandparents' houses, they're not maybe the most up to date, right? So they kind of help stage them and get them ready. And yeah, and so I have realtors that I have already that I work with. So if a client needs a realtor, I already have people that I can refer them to that I trust. For pet death doula, it's awesome. I find it a little bit harder emotionally because I'm just an animal lover. I love animals so much. And a lot of people, like in today's world, our animals are our family. They're our kids. They're, especially if people don't have kids, they're definitely their babies. And a lot of people don't know what to do, right? When you get a pet, you get all prepared and you get the cage and the puppy toys and the puppy pads, but you don't think about when they come to the end of their lives. So what kind of care they need, attention they need. I do Reiki on them. I have 2 dogs and I do Reiki on them as well. And it can be very calming. I have had one pet come through the same as you in a reading, but I've done readings on people's pets. I've done a few cat readings and dog readings. And when I was doing a reading on a lady's cat, and that's when the other another cat came through, and I was so confused. And she's like, no, I did have another cat that just died. Because I'm like, your cat's either in the spiritual world or alive, or there's another one. And she said, yeah, that's the other cat, and it had just passed away, 7 weeks prior or whatever. But yeah, often when pets die, they go into a veterinary office, and maybe it's not the most comforting, and the vets, they try their best. It's not that they're cold-hearted, but they're trained in a medical stance, right? Not necessarily in an empathic stance to help people grieve the loss of their pet.
So do you actually get messages from the pets?
Sometimes. So I have had messages come through. The funniest one was a rabbit, and it was like coming through as this, like, I am the boss of this house. And it was sort of, it wasn't so much a message in words like we would, but it was more of a feeling, like this animal was showing me, or their energy was showing me, that they thought they were larger than life, almost like a big guard dog. And the lady was laughing. She's like, my bunny, when it's not in its cage, sleeps at the front door, like it's guarding the house. So more they'll show me things than like actual messages would come through, like a person who's passed away kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Alrighty. Because the one I asked, because the one experience that I had, it was kind of the same thing. Like, they were getting my attention because it's like they just wanted me to see that they were even around this person. And I remember when I gave, I let the person know that the animal came through, and it was one of those things I've never had it happen before. It was totally random. So I told her, I was like, I never had this happen before, but did you by chance have a dog? And I described what the dog looked like. She was like, oh my God, that's a dog from my childhood. And I'm like, well, this dog has been following you since you was a kid. Like, it never left you.
You just gave me goosebumps. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I find it, I think it just really kind of amazed me how, like, with death, it made me look at death completely different, because it's like there, even though there's a loss, there's never really a separation. You know what I mean? It's like they're always there. And I find it so cool how it's just like they could be somewhere in a whole nother dimension, like handling another mission. And then they just come right on through, like, what's going on? Okay, I'm here. I love you, but I gotta go.
You know what? When I first started getting messages and paying attention to them, when I would go to the washroom, I'm like, y'all better not be in here, okay? You want your privacy. But then I realized, like, they're not there for that. But at first you're like, okay, are they always? You're sort of deciphering when they are and aren't here. But I just wanted to touch on that with animals coming through. My son is a Pisces. He's very intuitive, and children are usually intuitive anyways. And he was about 2 years old, and he came out of his bedroom. It was very late, and I did not have any pictures of my sister that passed away hanging in the house. We had just moved into it, so I hadn't really even shown him any. He was so little, and he came out of his room and he's like, Mom, there's this lady standing in my room. And he described my sister, and he said, and she's with a dog. And he described my dog that died in grade 4. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, oh yeah, they're just watching me and protecting me. And then he went right back in his room where he'd seen them and went to bed, no problem. So yeah, when you said that her dog came through, that's funny, because yeah.
Well, you know what? I introduced myself. That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Erica, have you ever worked with a doula personally?
I had a life coach, a spiritual the little things acting up. I had a spiritual life coach. All at one time. I had like a spiritual life coach, a life coach, and then another group therapy that I was doing, or that I'm still a part of right now. So I've done like past life readings, and I've done some things, but I want to learn more. Like I thought about quantum healing, hypnosis therapy, and I was like, well, why just go do a reading when you can learn also, you know? So I figured I would like to try something like that. What happened is this whole transition of the last year, I decided in January, I finally decided to let go of the business that I was doing because it just doesn't resonate with me. I always want to help people, but I just feel like there's just better ways to help. And for some reason, like I can do a vision board class because I have my own vision board book. But when I do my class, it's always different. And I end up kind of veering off into a subject and maybe telling a story. And somehow that story brings out something that's happening in this room. And if people don't leave crying, they do. They do. It's like, why did I even talk about this? Why did I talk about this particular situation with my mom or this particular situation with another family member? And then, you know, I pull things out, and I find healing. There's healing somehow in these conversations. And even in these group, you know, where I'm interviewing people, there's healing in providing this information. So definitely something I want to look into. And I was, ooh, she got a workbook. I need to know. I'd love to learn more. I love to learn more. And I see that being like a new direction, adding along with my workbook with my life coach, well, not my life coach, but my vision boards to take it deeper, how to actually help you manifest your visions maybe on a deeper level, because it's not that it was completely superficial, but my knowledge was basically superficial of some things, you know. And I've learned so much in this last year where I see I could just revamp my book and go further and take my classes further as well.
Yeah, that's actually the point that I was at last year, especially towards the end of the year. I don't know if you remember that conversation with me you were having where I was like, I'm taking a step back from readings, and you were like, well, congratulations, but what are you going to do? And I to take a step back because I think that's one of the hardest parts of becoming a doula or a coach, or even, a therapist is, designing the program. Because I remember that's honestly what made me stay stuck with the readings for so long. And I'm not gonna say stuck because I love the readings, and even now sometimes I miss them, and I'm like, well, maybe I should do a collective reading. But that's one thing that made me procrastinate. But because sitting down and actually writing the curriculum, because it can seem like a daunting task, and that's one thing that the lady who was coaching me had to teach me. She was like, instead of thinking about everything, just go step by step and then just cross that off and go to the next. Like don't keep focusing on the ends, but just make sure you're incorporating all the steps that need to be there, and then everything goes, like the meat will kind of fill itself a little bit. And so that's what I did. And it's also a lot of trial and error, like for like the first 6 months of me even incorporating coaching with my readings. Like that's why I have my journal, because notes, and I would get feedback from my clients when the program would end. Like, be as harsh or as kind as you want, but let me know where you felt like yes.
There's just a few, and they're just sitting on my desk. I probably have like 30 underneath. I can't have enough notebooks, so.
Right, and those things, it all helps. It really does. And then when you see that the things that you're giving your clients, the tools that you're giving them, and seeing them apply it every day is such a satisfying feeling to like see someone really take what you were able to teach them and transform it into their own life, and like say, I feel empowered now to where I can even walk alone.
Right. I know for me, like I have a good gift with vision and ideas. And so like you see, when we have fun, we did a whiz listening party. So we went down the music and listened to it and then give our interpretation of the music and just have a great time. So I have television shows in my head. I've been in the insurance business for 4 years. I have I have the knowledge of how to run an office. I have the knowledge of how to have a conventions. I know how to. So I find myself now totally giving people advice like tell me what the problem is. I'm a conduit. I can help you figure this out, and I can help you connect to the people that can get you what you need. But for some reason, I can put the puzzle pieces together to tell you, like, well, if I was going to do it, I would do this first, put this here, ask that person to do that. Like, I can help you organize it. Kind of like that, the dad on Cheaper by the Dozen. It's, I forget what you call it, but it's like you can just give structure to things.
Mhm.
And
Do you find it difficult to give it to yourself though? Because that's what we were saying earlier. We can figure out other people's messages, but it's hard to get your own.
absolutely, absolutely. Because I can get completely flustered, throw all the papers in the air and be like, I don't know what to do. I got this big pile on my desk. But if you come to me, I'm gonna be like, no, do this first, do that first. And I can totally clean your stuff up.
Right.
And
Right.
so yeah, I have to outsource some things mentally, because even with my book, I had a ghostwriter come help me organize it because I had all the things that go in it. And then I was like, oh, I got that much. Now what? Yeah, so you know how they say you can't eat an elephant in one bite, you know, you eat it one bite at a time. And so sometimes I need that. And then I need someone to help me stay on course. And I tell people too, I can't, if it's not on the calendar, then it's not going to happen. So
Right.
when you were talking about the organization of it all, I actually was a mobile phlebotomist at once too. And I'm really good at that too. So, but I would have a lot of clients and I could run my calendar. As long as I use my calendar, everything is good. Everything is good. But if that calendar, if I fail on that calendar, if you don't show up on there, then it's gone. Yeah.
You know, and I think the hardest part for me, because you know, I use scheduling software, you know, so it's not even getting them on the calendar that's the problem. For me, the issue was sessions going over because like I give that care, you know, and I want to make sure that before we end this, you know, like you truly understand. And so I've always found that sometimes I can go over, and that's where I had to learn to start spacing because I used to like schedule them back to back. I have one at 11 for an hour, then 12 for an hour, then 1 for an hour, and that was the biggest mistake I made in the beginning with my scheduling because you know sometimes it would end up I'm having to text a client like every 10 minutes like I'm so sorry. I'm you know I can't make it. I'm still in another meeting with a client and I would just feel so bad because you know there's people who they're fitting me in their lunch break, you know, and things like that. So it can become a lot to juggle, especially like when that calendar starts filling up.
I often tell people, I try to keep an eye on the clock because I was that way too. And I'll tell people, even if they're talking, I'll say, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we have 10 minutes left. So I do have other clients and if you want to rebook, but it is hard because sometimes you can just get carried away and you don't see the clock and then you're like, oh man.
It's just, you know, and because like it's that balance of not being rude, but making sure you're honoring your other clients.
Boundaries, right? They're so important.
With phlebotomy as well too. I did. Because even in the hospital, well, there was another thing too. In the hospital, I would have patients that you go draw blood from every day. And then when they pass, you know, you're like, well, what happened to Mr. So-and-so? Or I've had a patient who I used to come draw their blood every day, and then they were like, you know, then now they're missing a limb now because they had an amputation. So I knew then too that that was a lot for me emotionally, like dealing with that. Like, even though you have these kind of gifts, it's not really something I wanted to do. I couldn't even work at I volunteered at a shelter, a homeless shelter. So when I see people needing stuff, I'm like, oh my God. So I'll actually go, I was actually to the point where I started buying things, or I would get people in the dorms to donate. And they were like, no, these people can only have 3 outfits. You cannot, you know. So you kind of go overboard with giving too much and have to stop. So I was like, I have to be very careful in that aspect. And then also too with time, I could just go draw someone's blood and they want to talk and they want to keep you there. Even when I was selling phones at Sprint, like by the time it was over, people want to hug me, and people like, what were y'all talking about? Like, why is the person, you know, why is this person trying to hug you at the end of the sale? You know, so it's definitely
Connection.
and that's been my life. So I know, you know, for some reason people want to talk to me and they find me easy to talk to. It's kind of though too, this thing of it's all or nothing. People either are like, she's strange, or they're like, I like her. You know, it's like all or nothing. But I know I'm supposed to use it all. So
yeah. If I have if I'm working with a death doula client that day and they are elderly, and say I'm working with them in the morning, I almost will not book another client that day, or I will in the afternoon, because especially older people, they don't, like, a lot of their friends have passed away and their families are busy and they're lonely. So like you're getting, right, they just want to hug you after they, or, you know, they just want to talk about their day. And I've gone over to clients' house, you know, to do a quick thing with them, and I've been there for 6 hours. So I mean, and I don't just want to walk away. So in that case, yeah, if I know that they're elderly or they're a little bit more lonely, then I'll just sort of like, however long you need me, I can be here, kind of thing.
and that's why I asked before, how do you balance that how much you give and how much it affects you? Because going to see people in a nursing home and taking their blood, and they want to hold you and they want to touch you and they want to keep you, and you're like, you know, I can only stay in here for 5 minutes to get this blood, and then I have to move on. So it
Well,
would
it's kind of,
it was hurtful to have to leave them, because you know that, like you said, nobody, people aren't spending enough time with them sometimes, or as much as time as they would like, you know.
yeah. And it's true. So that's what's nice about being a death doula is hospice, like, they're great and there's nothing wrong with that, or PSWs and stuff, but they're on the clock. And hospice, you know, they want them to see so many clients a day and do so many things. And to me, I'd rather have quality of time over quantity of patients. I'd love to reach everybody, but if I can just help one person at a time, then sometimes that's the world to them, right? So, but listening to yourself too, like if you start to feel like, there'll be days when I'm just crabby and I know that I need a break from grief and I need to just take a step back, you know? So like trusting your intuition and your inner voice, your inner power. So many people ignore it. So listening to that is so important, and not being sorry for having to listen to it, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that was something that I really struggled with in December, because when I announced that I wasn't doing readings anymore, there were people who came to me monthly, or bi-weekly faithfully, and I just had, I had to be honest with them. I love you guys as clients, but this work particularly was too draining for me. And, when I took a step back from it, I took a whole 4-week break, because ever since I had started the work, I didn't take a vacation. I didn't take time for myself. And if I wasn't working with a client, I was trying to create something that was for clients. And so I will say that, you know, you were so on point with listening to yourself and your body and your mind, you know, and giving yourself that rest, that break when you know you're getting to that point to where you're taking on too much. Because, you know, it's about quality. And when you're exhausted and you're not replenishing yourself, you know, how are you pouring into your customers, you know, into your
Exactly.
clients? And so it's very important to learn how to give yourself that break, but also like just like you would put in that PTO if you was working for at a job, you know, you got PTO for yourself and get you a break.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, it's, even though it's fulfilling work, it's taxing and it's hard. And you know, who said that working your passion is not going to be tiring, you know?
It's true. And that's the one thing. Once I found what I was passionate about, it no longer feels like work.
Mhm.
So I don't realize sometimes how much I'm doing. And I will be on the computer. And my daughter came to me a couple weeks ago and she's like, Mom, you've been working online for the entire week and I've hardly seen you. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because sometimes I don't even realize it. And she's like, hi. And I'm like, oh God, I'm sorry. So I have to completely shut it down because when you love what you're doing, it is hard sometimes to listen to that, to take the break until you're exhausted. And if you don't take the break, the universe will make sure you do. And it'll make you sick. You'll have a cold, then you'll be forced to, or else you'll do it the easy way or the hard way, right?
And that's why I've learned to start doing it the easy way. Like something that I tell myself daily is that I don't have to learn my lessons the hard way. Um, because I've done that to myself. I recently did that to myself. Had to learn the lesson the hard way. And so it's, you know, and like your daughter, my daughters actually pulled my coattail. They did it to me today because I had a session and then I was rushing to try to get dinner done so I could do another one and then make sure I was ready for the show. And they was like, you work a lot, Mom, and we want to play Amongst Us tonight. And I'm like, oh, I know, ladies, but you know, and I hate that I have to put the but in there. But you know, I also teach them that this is a part of building up your passion, you know, because I let them know that it won't forever be like this. But while mommy's still organizing and, you know, streamlining everything, and, you know, because eventually I would like for my courses to be completely self-paced, you know. But until then, you know, like, please
Yeah.
forgive mommy while I find the proper balance.
Yeah.
I like that you call them ladies. They're like very, very diplomatic about it. Well, ladies, with you, Ria, what would you say people need to look for in a spiritual coach or a spiritual doula?
Um, well, for one that's vulnerable with their own story. Um,
Mhm.
I and the only reason I can say that is because I fell for the trap before. I fell for the glamour, you know, like, oh my gosh, look where they are right now. And you know, really truly they wasn't teaching me how to heal myself. They was teaching me this, think positive and this will happen. And I'm just like, so did that actually truly work for you? Like, you know, so I would say look for vulnerability and authenticity. Also, you know, I would just say watch their interactions, because like everything is on social media right now. So watch their interactions with other people, watch their character, watch the way that they move. Do you see that they have a lot of followers, like a lot of sheep? Or do you see that they have a lot of leaders behind them? Because then you can gauge their teaching style. Are they looking to teach you to be empowered, or are they looking for you to come to them for answers all the time? Because for me, a coach, a doula, is not someone that you cling to. It's someone who you honor as an individual and like, hey, I admire what you're doing. Could you show me the blueprint on how you got there? And I've noticed that there's some coaches out there that just want a following. So I would definitely watch their audience as well. Do they have a lot of sheep, or do they have a lot of leaders? And then the third thing, I would definitely see if they offer some type of consultation, even if it's paid. If they don't offer no consultation and you jump in their inbox and the first thing they're like is cash out me for my program, I would completely ditch that. They should be able, like, I think it's very important for not just the client, but the coach to make sure that they're a good fit. So if you don't have a coach that's even vetting you a little bit, that would be a huge red flag for me.
I love that you hit on the points of authenticity because, it's always being talked about being a boss and fake it till you make it. And, I think people kind of run a little bit far with that. And now they can have a wonderful looking website and they can have beautiful pictures, professional pictures, but that authenticity, how they speak to you, how they answer your questions, how they respond to you, and definitely look at any results, what are the results? Because I see the same thing, because when it comes to this, that's it. People want answers and they want help, and they will become completely dependent. And this is just a new addiction for them. I was actually in a group class, training class from another healer, and it was obvious that this woman had asked this question over and over again, and she was kind of stuck with, will I be with this man? And so the person actually said, well, we've done a reading on this before, and it seems the answer changed. And I was like, kind of wondering about the young lady herself. I'm like, well, how many, she keeps asking that same question. So she's showing that she's extremely vulnerable, that she's extremely dependent on his voice, and has never come to a decision. And if it looked like a real dangerous sign where, like, wow, how many of these trainings you've been to, or how many of these sessions are you going to be doing? But I could say for my own personal healing, I mean, I got way more than I could imagine. I got business advice. I got some supplements, that it wasn't like this person was selling me supplements. It was like, well, what kind of things are going on with you? Open your mind up to these items. If you can get them, get them. If not, get them when you can. But I was opened up to a lot of, so much help that I never imagined I could get out of one coach. It was just amazing. So now I know, Randi, you wanted to answer the same question, like because how many are there? How many, do you guys have a society for a connection for people who are death doulas? Because I mean, you're the first one I ever heard of. So
there's not a lot of us out there. That's why I started the program, because there's such a need, like, to fill that gap between the medical team and then like what the client wants, right? And someone to stand up for them. So there is resources. I run the Certified Death Doulas of Ontario page on Facebook. It's just a group, and I post death doula information on there, and it's filled with certified death doulas and people looking for them. They can go there. And I know in Canada, there's different provinces. There's death cafes, they're called, online, where it's like a chat room and people just talk about death and grief, and you can find doulas in there. But definitely hopping on the internet is the best way to find a death doula right now, because they're not everywhere. So going to Google and typing in death doulas in whatever state or province somebody lives in is the best way to find us. And once you've found one, to know if they're a good fit for you, is to ask all of sort of personal things. So not super personal, but if you're a religious person, I would ask that death doula's religious beliefs. Some doulas will not touch anything to do with religion. To me, it doesn't matter. I will help the person no matter what their religion or belief, or they're human. They deserve love to me, but everybody's different. The free consultation or paid one is a good one as well that Rhea mentioned. I offer a free one, about 20 minutes long. If people want longer, then I usually charge, just because it's so busy. And then I look at reviews as well. And I'm a little bit wary of reviews because I know anyone can write them. So we can have all our family go on and say, we're awesome.
Right.
So I look for reviews that are different. You can usually spot the ones that are written by some, like the person running the company, because they're all similar. Like they have the same kind of wording or speaking style, but you can find other ones if they're authentic or whatnot. But really just, and as well, pay attention to your body signs. Every single person on this planet is intuitive, whether we know it or not. And you can go around people and all of a sudden your stomach hurts, or you just don't feel right, or, you know, really paying attention to the changes in your emotion and your body. Do they make you feel like you have to explain yourself? I remember I said at the beginning, I don't like having to do that. Or if they make you feel like you have to defend yourself or anything like that, if they're making you feel anything less than yourself, then I would be absolutely wary, because it's such a personal process. You want somebody who's really there for your best interests and who's authentic. And I still do readings online, but I love it so much. So I was doing Tarot Tuesdays and I was doing free tarot readings. I still do them. I've taken a break because I've been really busy, but I'm getting back to them. So if they have free stuff like that, watch the videos. I post them after the live feeds. Yeah, Google their name, check them out.
You know, I actually like the first one that you really brought up. That was a really good point about making sure the beliefs match. Because that's something that I do bring up in my consultations. I specifically ask that question. When it comes to your spirituality, is there a particular tradition or practice that you are looking to learn about? Because I'm what I call a quantum spiritualist. I belong to no path, no tradition. I'm very sovereign in my spirituality. And, you know, I respect anyone who does want to follow a tradition. And I'm very honest about that. Like, if you want to learn about Ifa, or you want to learn about hoodoo or voodoo or any of those things, or Santeria or anything, you know, I'm not an expert in that. I'm only an expert in the quantum realm of things, which I think encompasses everything. But so I do find that very important, because compatibility, just like in relationships, is very important between doula and client.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, I liked that I don't consider myself like one religion or one belief. I'm a huge believer in every way, shape, and form of moderation, whether it's like what we eat, what we drink, what we do, what we believe in. I believe in things from all kinds of religions. Like, I'll believe something over here that's a Catholic belief, that over here in Buddhism, I believe something different. Like, whatever speaks to you and resonates with you, really, and I think going too far one way or the other is unhealthy, but to just be moderate and open, like you said, open to learning about other people's beliefs and stuff.
Right, exactly.
A know-it-all wouldn't be good to look for. Don't look for a know-it-all.
Right, and that's one thing that I constantly preach on my page. I'm not here to tell you a truth. I'm here to show you how to access that truth yourself, so you can determine.
There's two things that I've seen too, like recently I've noticed, and I wish we had this conversation before I got my sink fixed, because it was like, trust yourself. He's making me nervous. I don't know why. I kept asking. I was like, have you done this before? Do you have experience? And I don't know. I just kept going in my head. I was just like, I had this feeling, and boy, oh boy, was I right? And I was like, why don't I know to trust myself by now?
You know what? 99
trust myself.
99% of the things that we go through that are hard to go through are because we didn't trust ourselves.
Oh, that is the absolute truth. There's been so many times where I'm just like, I thought this the first time.
Like relationships, right? You're like, I shouldn't be here, but you stay and you stay and you stay, and then you leave and you're like, why didn't I leave earlier? I knew I shouldn't have been here.
And the other thing is that you guys were so on point with is a know-it-all, because you know, I follow a lot of experts, and then you can say, well, have you heard of this person, and that person, and a friend of mine, they were like, oh, they're all idiots, and I was like, oh, sir, they're just so successful, but they're just successful idiots, and I was like, ooh, sounds like you got a little ego problem. It would be difficult for me to deal with that person because I already saw the ego problem, and then so moving forward a little bit more, and then I was like, ooh, so here we go with my own scathing comment, because if they do this to other people, they're gonna do it to you eventually too. So if you're working with someone and you're choosing a specialist and they're condescending to others, then eventually they're gonna smack you in the face with it too. And I think I've seen that with 2 experts that I know, that I was like, you know, watch out for these little guys because we're coming. You might be too big, but you know.
Somebody told me something, and it was, those who talk to you about other people will talk about you to other people, which is exactly what you're saying.
Right. And then also another thing is coaches who impose. And what I mean by that is I've been talking to other coaches online, and we'll be having a conversation. And I'm a person, the way that I communicate, and I'm very direct about what I mean. So if I did not mention something in my statement, I wasn't implying it. That's just the type of person that I am. And I've come across coaches where we're having conversations about something, and then they're imposed their belief or belief that they have to work through, and they be like, well, it sounds to me like you do this. And I think to myself, I'm like, do you do that to your clients? Like, do you just put words in your client's mouth? Because I said nothing like that, and I've noticed that there's still a few that could do for some shadow work because they're not understanding that they're projecting, and because they read people, they're quick to dismiss it as a projection, be like, well, no, I read people, so that's what I'm reading on you. And it's just like, no, I think at this point you're imposing, and maybe you should take some time to step back and listen to the client and maybe analyze, are you imposing your belief on them? Because some coaches can actually take clients completely off track because you're guiding them in the wrong way, because you're imposing what you used to believe, or what was your personal problem, instead of actually hearing what this client's problem is.
Yeah.
Totally true.
One of the biggest things we teach in our Death Doula course is active listening. And I teach other death doulas to, the number one thing is, don't try to sell yourself. Like, listen to the person, and in the last 5-10 minutes, then give them what you can offer them to help them. But don't sit there and say, well, I've helped 35 people die happily, and like what, and and I'm the best in my, like, you just, nobody, it's something to be confident, and it's another thing to be cocky, and it's just so off-putting when somebody is claiming to be the best and they're kind of just snubbing other people in their field.
Yeah, it's definitely off-putting for me. I've chosen not to work with certain people because they were trying to tell me something that I just absolutely knew what it wasn't. And it's funny because I actually had gotten a message several times that one of the reasons why I was having a hard time with that area was because Spirit wanted me to start following my own advice. And so it's like they were kind of purposely leading me to people who could potentially lead me astray, to see if I would trust my intuition versus what someone was telling me. And the only reason it made me really think about that, because I was like, well, what about those people who aren't as tapped into self? They're coming to coaches because they're trying to learn how to get there. It may not be as innate in them as someone else. So I'm like, how many coaches out there have really taken or made people feel worse than what they already were, simply because they implied something that wasn't necessarily true or the reality of the situation?
It almost reminds me of like a cult leader when they just want all these people to follow them and like bow down, and it is so unhealthy. It's like, oh Lord, like we all have a little bit of magic in us, and I would love to help people tap into that. I don't want to be like the holy grail of all things, you know, like it's so important because I did, like you said, I had a lady who wanted to work with me, and it felt really good. And then at the end of our meeting, she's like, now I don't talk about other people, but, and then brrr, the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, I can't work with this lady now. And I really didn't have an issue until then. And so after I left, I'm like, how do I deal with this? Like, I can't. So I did face it, but yeah, sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, like you'll see that there's personal issues that may not even have anything to do with the service itself, where it's just like, no, we probably won't be able to do this. Um, and you know, and it's not one of those things, because that's one thing I will say that I've been able to master, as the ability to let other people be them, who they are, while also honoring myself and saying that I just can't have that in my space. So you know, it's definitely one of those things where it's just like, I don't want to seem like I'm being biased or I'm being prejudiced or even just picky, but if I want to stay at a certain frequency, I just can't allow certain thought processes to invade my space, because I, you know, even though I have the ability to transmute, it's exhausting to transmute, and I don't want to be transmuting all day.
Yeah. And I mean, what we say and what we feel and what we like, all of that helps to manifest things. So if you're working with someone and they are trying to manifest something like that, for say they're all about finances and getting rich and or whatever, and they're like, and they want to do that, and then this other person is all about keeping the earth clean or whatever, like those are really gonna be hard to come together, right? So it's a matter of what is that person trying to manifest, or what is their intention, right? To make sure it aligns with yours. Not that either is bad, but it just might not be what you want to bring into your life, right? So
Right, you know, and you know, I guess that's where we go back to the compatibility of everything. So, it, you know, because it's a relationship. It is, you know, it's not one of those things where you're, you know, and honestly, even with, you know, the, you know, your crystal lady, your oil lady, you know, even those are personal relationships, you know, because like when it comes to your spirituality, we take this stuff serious, right? Like we want to go to the same person because we know that the vibe that they put in their products is, you know, we know that it's been anointed in a way that's, you know, that we love, and the energy is just pure. So you know, in all things, when it comes to our personal growth, you know, anything that we're using, whether it's tools or coaching or, you know, even programming, is it in alignment? Does it resonate? Because anything other than what resonates is just going to confuse you and make it even harder to stay on path.
you know what, a good way to look at it is like every song is played at a different frequency or a different, and people are the same way. We're made of different frequencies and resonations, and not one is better than the other, but when you find a song on your level, you're like, "Ooh, this feels good," you know, you can feel it. Where maybe you're a gentle classical song and heavy metal comes in and you're like, I can't, it doesn't flow with my song.
Right, like that beat don't go.
So I definitely resonate with integrity. Um, Integrity would definitely be like a bottom line. Then
Mhm.
definitely people who can share themselves and they're not like too good to talk about themselves, about their weakness sometimes too. Because then that goes with that condescending thing, because a lot of people, if they can't open up and be like, you know, I really struggled with this sometimes, you got to know that the person is real, and not that, you know, integrity and authenticity. But this was wonderful. I would ask Virya, how do people find you and find your services and your classes?
Well, I do have mainly my services are posted on my Facebook page, my business Facebook page. I am Rhea Slay. You can also find me on Instagram at I am Rhea Slay, and as well on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel, Rhea Slay, therapist and spiritual doula. So you can find me there. I'm always open, inbox always open for questions. So if you ever want to find me, I'm there.
Awesome. And Randy.
You can find me. Well, it's an easy name to remember. You know what? I'll tell you my middle name. Here's me being open and vulnerable. It's Lou, like Randy Lou. You can't get more redneck than that. And I always say my parents really wanted a boy. Like, thank you, Randy Lou. But anyway.
Double.
It made it appear, right?
You can find me on Facebook, Death Doula Randi, Death Doula Randi on Instagram. We have a website as well. We run, me and Melissa, it's the Ontario School of Energy.com. And the front name in front of that is pronounced Virya, which in Sanskrit, it means universal energy or life energy. So it's spelled Virya. So you can find me across all of those platforms. We have an Ontario School of Energy Facebook page as well.
That is wonderful. Well, I'm glad we were able to share this with people to help them be enlightened on your services. This is like a whole new world to me, probably, because we've been at home more with the circumstances and more focused on our own health and even understanding life and death. For myself, I know for sure, it caused me to have some real serious conversations with my own son. Like, I'm not going to be here forever, but there's some things I want to make sure that just in case. And I think it all just led me to this place where we are right now. And I'm really excited to be able to share that with other people. And I'm the First Lady Erica. You can find me at any place. The First Lady Erica at Gmail, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just look me up. Even my website, thefirstladyerica.com. And I chose that name for a reason, and that is because we're all, the First Lady or First Gentleman of our own legacy, and we all deserve respect. And as we give others respect, we earn more respect for ourselves. So I just want to thank everybody who was able to watch this evening. We weren't able to go live, but we'll upload, and it's still going to be amazing. I'll be out of jail tomorrow, y'all. At 7 a.m. I'll be out of jail and back to posting like crazy. So
you guys are awesome tonight. I love you guys.
Oh, I love you too, Shalom.
Thank you so much.
Shalom, I am light with seeds of the sun.
Yes.
All right.
Beautiful self.